You are now listening to Redbeard Talks Redbirds, your home for all things Cardinals baseball. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am Alex Stovall. This is Redbeard Talks Redbirds, and my cousin Dave is back on with me again. How's it going, Dave? What's going on today?
Going great. It is hot and sunny in Houston, Texas. Bring your sunscreen and stay in the air conditioning.
Same here. It is sweltering. I lived in the Houston area for a couple years, and I think South Florida is actually worse as far as heat and humidity. I was surprised, but anyway,
I'm surprised by that, but they built a dome stadium in Houston. Well, it's a retractable roof stadium in Houston, so ball games here are comfortable, easy. Rangers figured that out 20 years later. Rangers figured out, finally built one with a roof to keep their fans from melting.
it only took two new stadiums within what, 20 or 30 years?
Yeah, two stadiums in 20 years to figure that out. But all right, good job, Dallas.
There you go. Well, you've got a nice little T-shirt on. Show that to us.
Yeah, this is June 6th, 80th anniversary today of the D-Day invasion in Normandy. My father-in-law picked up this T-shirt 10 years ago on the 70th anniversary. So I just want to say thank you to the veterans from World War II. We should remember their courage and sacrifice and never take it for granted. And this is a good day to remember that. So I just want to get that out of the way.
I love that. That was well said.
All right.
I've got my grandfather on my mom's side, not your grandfather. And all three of his brothers all served. And if I remember correctly, one of them was actually involved in that as far as flying one of the planes.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. There's not too many of those guys left around, but even the ones that are gone, thank you to them.
Yes, sir. Greatest generation.
100%.
Okay.
All right, let's get into some baseball.
Lovely sentiment. I love it. That's a fantastic way to start. How about a really crappy way to start after that? Most everyone knows by now, Angel Hernandez.
Yeah.
Fired.
Yeah.
If he was not part of a union, we would have called that being fired. But, he got a nice check and got to sign a contract and walk away and get paid to quit doing something that he wasn't very good at. What are your thoughts on all that stuff?
Let me quiet that. Thoughts on that? Nobody is going to miss Angel Hernandez except the podcast guys who make money showing his clownery. And the only ones that are going to miss Angel, the players aren't going to miss him. The managers sure ain't going to miss him. The fans are not going to miss that. I felt like they could have moved him out of being a home plate umpire like 2 years ago. He could have umpired first, second, third, and then rotated right back to first base because he was real bad behind the plate.
Yeah.
The interesting thing to me is that I could pick 2 or 3 umpires that he should have taken with him when he headed out the door with his little parachute contract. Take CB Bucknor with you. That guy is, hot take, worse than Angel Hernandez.
You're not the first to say that, or not the first I've heard say that.
Right. CB Bucknor is worse. Angel was. Hey, I can say it that way now. First time I get to say that. Angel was really bad, particularly with balls and strikes. Bucknor. My problem with Bucknor was that he seemed to hold a chip on his shoulder against certain players and especially certain managers. And that, like an umpire shouldn't have a chip on his shoulder. Like, okay, you miss a call, or the umpire or the manager thinks you missed a call, and he comes out there and barks and yells and whatever. And that happens all the time. Like Joe West was great at handling those things. I love Joe West as umpire, even though he made mistakes, and we all saw him, and he was kind of comical when he made mistakes, but he didn't hold grudges. He'd be back the next day and laughing it up with guys and having a good time on a ball field. And whatever happened yesterday with a disagreement was over and done. And I like that about your good umpires, that there's no reason for them to hold a grudge and hold it against them and whatever like that. And
no, you can't. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as pitchers. You have to stay in the moment and what are you doing next? It's the same thing for umpires. You can't be worried about what happened a minute ago. You got a job to do right now.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Your high leverage relief pitchers is a great example of that. Good reference. Yeah. Uh yeah, I could even roll right into like last night's game. Jojo Romero came back in for the Cardinals in a high leverage situation after he had a real bad outing on Monday against the same opponent. He came
Yep.
in there yesterday and looked really, really good. He was
Locked it
sharp,
down.
locked it down, did his job. Boy, he was good.
Yeah.
And so that's a yeah, you gotta flush yesterday and go on to today. And uh
I think it was Pat McAfee who said this is one of the worst things to happen in Major League Baseball this year because one of our favorite storylines for the year is now gone and we have one less thing to talk about.
yeah, see that's what I'm talking about. Is that the McAfees and John Boys of the world are upset that Angel's gone. The rest of us are like, yeah, he's finally go
Well,
sit on a beach
everyone's
with a
happy
Mai
he's
Tai.
gone. The reason we enjoyed talking about it is because it was so bad. How do you not? It was just absurd.
Well,
Anywho,
he was the single entity embodiment of, hey, we need automatic balls and strike systems. We actually went to a AAA game a couple of weeks ago, and they have the ABS system in the AAA park. And so I got to see it firsthand. I'd never seen it in person before. I'd heard about it,
I
whatever.
still have not seen it. I've seen challenges of balls and strikes, but I've not seen that. So tell us about it.
Well, that's all it was challenges of balls and strikes. And it was so seamless.
Okay.
It was very easy. There were
So the
half
machine
a
was
dozen.
not dictating balls and strikes. There was still a home plate umpire making calls.
So apparently the way it works, and I had to go read up on it to figure it out because I didn't follow minor leagues and all this. Apparently the way it works is that they do some games with a fully automated system and some games with an umpire and an automated review system.
Mm.
The game I went to was the latter. The umpire is calling balls and strikes, but the ABS system is there and they can appeal it instantly anytime the pitcher, the batter, or the catcher, any of the three of them, all they have to do is reach up and tap their head, tap their hat or helmet, and it triggers the review. And the review only took like 4 or 5 seconds.
Yep.
It was the umpire would come on and say, batters initiated review, call is upheld, pitch is a strike, and the batter would walk back to the dugout for strike three because
We
they're not
actually have that
challenging.
exact same setup in Palm Beach, their low A team. We do not have the fully automated setup. It's strictly umpire with the review requests.
Okay, the review requests come so fast and then the review so quickly that I thought it was a great system. I liked. I haven't seen in person the fully automated system, but apparently all it is a buzzer on the umpire's belt. And so from the fan standpoint, you might not notice the difference. It's going to look like the umpire is calling it, but he's not. He's standing there and he stares at the ball come through, and then his belt buzzes if it's a strike and it doesn't buzz if it's a ball or something. And so if his belt buzzes, he puts his arm up and says strike. And the casual fan is not even going to know the difference. But the fact is the umpire could have had his eyes closed and his belt buzzer is going to tell him ball or strike.
We
Which
practically have blind home plate umpires at that
which
point.
which some would argue is the way Angel Hernandez called games. That's that's kind of the running joke is that it's no different than Angel Hernandez for the
Well, and
casual
it's
fan.
interesting to think about because you've got these umpires, and some of them have been really bad, and some of them have been actually quite good. But
Yeah,
okay, let's take out the good and the bad part. Let's just talk about how difficult you make it on other people at times. You know, whether it's the managers and players like you're talking about and holding grudges and throwing people out of games and picking fights or whatever. It's that type of behavior that, in my opinion, just keeps pushing us closer and closer to this automated ball strike and taking the human element out. I actually
right.
really like having the human element, but I also
Yes,
like being able to challenge a call like, we were just discussing and some of the others
right.
in Major League Baseball or other professional sports. I feel like once the human element's gone, I feel like it takes away a flavor. It takes away a part of the sport that makes it special. I don't know.
Yes,
What am I
I
trying to
100%
say?
agree with you.
Can you
I
say it
100%.
better?
It part of the game as you grow up playing the game, and this is especially meaningful for me because I've got a 16-year-old son who's played the game since he was about 5, and I've always told him, and a 7, 8, 10-year-old kid constantly wants to come back to the dugout and blame the umpire, right? I didn't strike out. The umpire struck me out. It's not my fault. That ball was high. That ball was outside. Whatever, 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 whatever. And it's like, look, it's your job to convince the umpire that it's a strike. Or if that pitch was close, maybe you should have swung and taken it out of the umpire's hands. Why did you leave that up to the umpire? That's part of the game. You got to teach the kid those things because that reflects in life too. You're not going to have automatic ball and strike calls throughout your life. Like that's just not the way life works.
Well, and
And
it's like you're talking about. It's kind of like learning how to grow up and mature and even take some responsibility for yourself. Even if
right,
something isn't your fault, you still take responsibility for it to take the proper action and move forward.
bingo. So baseball, one of the beauties of baseball is how well it reflects life. And when you take the umpire human element out of it, then it is less a reflection of life. So all of these like hyper uh, high def replay reviews with super slow mo to determine whether there was fan interference on a fly ball into the stands and all that kind of dilutes that and takes some of that element away that
Agreed.
that true fans really really appreciate. And so like I don't know where you draw the line. It's impossible to like pick like where's too far to go and where's not. And so having watched that AAA game a couple of weeks ago with the helmet tap uh, appeal system, I really liked that because the human umpire was still calling the balls and strikes, and the batter and the catcher and the pitcher have to choose: do I burn one of my challenges? Because you've only got I don't know like half a dozen challenges for the game or something. Or maybe it's not even that many. It might be fewer. I don't know the number.
I don't know
But
the specifics on that.
I don't know the specific number, but I know there's a fixed number, and if you get it right, you don't subtract one from your number. But if you fail, you're down one.
Right.
And so the batter doesn't sit there and challenge every call. I never saw the whole game. I never saw a batter on either team challenge a strike that wasn't strike 3. They don't challenge strike 1 or strike 2. They don't do it. It's not worth the risk. I didn't see a catcher challenge one that wasn't ball 4. I saw ball 4 get called back where the umpire said ball 4 and the catcher tapped and they said nope, it's a strike, and the batter had to get back in the box. So that I thought that was a really good system. I liked it a lot. The other point that I want to make that I don't think people are talking about enough is that when you put any kind of automatic strike calling system into place, you're by definition you are changing the way the game is played at that level relative to the younger levels. So now you've got big league players with automatic ball strike, but you've got like a kid like my son who's 16. They're not going to have an automatic ball strike system at some high school level. They're not gonna, because the camera systems are sophisticated and expensive, and the whole system is not high school teams and these select travel teams that are all over Texas. They're bigger than high school ball in Texas, by the way.
I think that's just about everywhere now, but
It
yes.
probably is. I can only speak to Texas, but those tournaments that are every weekend all over Texas, they're not going to have those systems. They're
Yeah.
just not. There's no way. And so now you've got high school players trying to make it to the next level, and the catcher has to learn how to frame pitches and how to call a game and how to work an umpire. And then you're telling me that somewhere along the pro level, the catcher no longer has to do that. Now it's no longer does the batter have to defend a pitch that might be 2 inches outside, but the ump's been calling it that way all day. Now he doesn't have to do that because he's got this automatic system that isn't going to do that. And so I don't like much the idea of the game changing and certain skills going away as you get older. Like you should be adding skills, not subtracting them as you advance
Yeah,
in the game. So I don't like that angle of it very much. But that challenge system still kind of maintains that for me, whereas the fully automatic system completely takes that away.
sure.
So that's my opinion on that. I don't. I like the challenge system where you only get a couple challenges. That feels like an add, not a subtraction, and the automatic system felt like a subtraction.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a nice kind of meet in the middle so that, okay, these players are paid millions of dollars. These games are worth tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. And, we need to make sure we're getting the important calls right. And most of the calls are going to be right anyway, but
Yeah,
still keeping the human element alive. I
yeah.
think that's a good middle ground.
And if we if if we prioritize things the way you just described them, and you described it very well, but if that really is the priority, there are other ways to do that that wouldn't even involve technology, or wouldn't put technology into the game at any rate. You could grade the umpires. We have that capability. You can go online and see umpire grades on balls and strikes right now for every game played this year. You can see that. You could grade umpires and say, "Hey, Angel, you're terrible. You don't get to call home plate anymore." You could do that, but they won't because of the umpires union, and we all know that.
Yes. The other thing similar to that they could do is grade the umpires and use that to dictate how much they're going to make the next season.
There you
Now all of a
go.
sudden we're
That'd work.
incentivizing actually being good at your
There you
job.
go.
Gee,
How
what
about
a
an incentive?
concept.
Yeah, well, like we put players' batting averages and pitchers' ERAs up there for everyone to see. And if you roll
Uh-huh.
out a terrible ERA, you're probably going to get a pay cut next time around.
Well, and take this approach. So these guys, they're going to get paid, relatively about the same regardless, but they're in some ways, in some small ways, they're dictating the statistics of these players who get paid based on performance.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's a
I think they
that's a
should
factor there.
also be incentivized to do well.
Yeah,
All right. Anyway, Angel
yeah. Okay.
Hernandez, goodbye.
Adios,
Thank you for your
sayonara.
service.
Yeah, enjoy your mai tai and sit on the beach and
Yeah.
stay out of baseball for a minute. Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So let's go Cardinals. The interesting team they are so far in 2024. Obviously, they've had quite a bit of struggles. They've had some good things, some bad things. They lost 3 out of 4 games to the Brewers, and then decided they were going on this tear, and they went 11-3 in their next 14 games. And that
Terrible
was in
fun.
LA against the Angels. That was at home against the Red Sox, at home against the Orioles, I believe at home against the Cubs, and then they went to Cincinnati for that 11-3 streak. And
Right.
then from Cincinnati, they went to Philadelphia. They dropped 2 out of 3. And then they went to Houston. They dropped 2 out of 3. And I guess most people are probably in a similar spot that I am. But like, who is this team? Because the pitching, both the bullpen and the starting pitching, surprised most people, I would say, this year, how good they've been. But the offense on paper and just looking at the people that we have in there, the ones that aren't performing, we ought to be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 offense if people are doing what they're supposed to do. And
Well,
so it's kind of confusing trying to figure out who we are and what we're doing and what's going to happen.
okay. I got a handful of thoughts on all of that. The first thought, I think I'll go backwards on what you said. I'll start at the end and work my way back. The first thing you said, our offense ought to be top 5, top 10. Yeah, if we had the offense that the optimists thought we would have, yeah. Okay. I didn't really hold that optimism. If you recall, a couple months ago, I wanted to add offense. I
Sure.
talked about adding a guy like Bellinger when he was a free agent because I wanted to add offense. I thought we were not deep enough. I thought we were leaning too hard on the development of guys like Nootbaar and Walker and Wynn and Scott. Okay. And one out of those four guys has kind of hit their optimistic ceiling for this season, right? Mason Wynn has been everything we wanted him to be.
If he had fewer errors, I would say everything and more.
Okay, fair. Sure, but he's a rookie shortstop. He's going to have a couple of. Fine, I'll take that. He also makes some plus plays that I haven't seen made since Ozzie Smith.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll take that, and I expect that next year he'll be better about that, and that's fine. I'll live with that. But those other three guys haven't lived up to their optimistic expectations, right? Two of them are back down in the minors, and one of them's on the injured list. And then of course you have some struggles from your key cornerstone thumpers. Those guys aren't performing like you want, but I'm not going to worry too much about Arenado and Goldschmidt. I'm gonna let them work their own things out. They're veterans. I'm not gonna hammer them. Here's my real point. We could talk all day about the rosy expectations for a top 5, top 10 offense, but the offense that Oli Marmol rolled out the last 3 days in Houston did not have more than 6 or 7 legitimate big league hitters in it. We rolled out lineups with, I love him, but he's over the hill. Matt Carpenter hitting 180 or whatever. We roll out
190, 200 right now.
Okay, he got a hit on Tuesday that bumped his average to 200, and then he went right back down again.
In his defense, he hadn't had a lot of playing time. When he came back from injury, he looked pretty darn good, and then he went to the bench again.
Fine, but does anybody really think he's a legit major league hitter at this point in his career? He's just not. I'm sorry.
I would argue he's a 4-day-a-week guy who can be productive. Now, again, I'm biased. That was one of my favorite players for at least 6 or 7 years.
I agree with that. But those years ended in about 2020, 2019, somewhere in there. Those years ended, and this is 4 or 5 years after that.
That's
true.
He is
not that player anymore. Look at if you don't like small sample sizes of this year, go look at his batting average last year. It was below 200.
I'm aware. But the year before that, he went and worked out with Matt Holliday all offseason. He had a great year for the Yankees.
He had a great half a year with the Yankees, and we're counting on that magically reappearing. No, come on.
But we also know that Matt Carpenter is more than just a bat off the bench at this point in his career. He brings more value to a team and to a clubhouse than just that. But I will admit, you have an absolute
off the roster.
Huh?
I'm sorry. I said make him the assistant head coach or assistant batting coordinator and get him off the roster. Here's what we have for a roster right now. We have probably 7 legit major league hitters on the roster, on the active roster. Brendan Donovan, Alec Burleson, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Gorman, Nolan Arenado, Ivan Herrera.
That's 6.
That's only 6. Mason Wynn. Sorry, Mason Wynn is 7. Who else you got as a hitter on the active roster? You got Brandon Crawford? No. Pedro Paez? Not even close. Michael Ciani? Major league defender, not a major league hitter.
I think he could be, but he's not there.
He's not there. Matt Carpenter? No. Dylan Carlson? No. These guys are overmatched against major league pitchers. They're AAA level hitters at best. And this is who we have on the active roster. I can sit here and criticize Marmol's decision, but he doesn't have much to work. And I'm not a Marmol fan. I'm not. My son and my dad know it. I criticize him heavily. But here I am defending him. He doesn't have much to work with. You can't roll out a top 10 offense if you can only roll out 7 bona fide major league hitters.
That's fair.
Okay,
so
and yesterday's...
How about we play a little what if then, if we're defending Marmol?
Yeah.
What if Tommy Edman is in there and he's hitting 280 plus and getting on base?
Yes, that's part of your problem.
And what if Newt Barr's on the field and he's hitting 270, 280, and you're getting 20 home runs out of him?
And yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
that makes a big difference because
makes a
instantly
huge
you went
difference.
from 7 guys to 9 guys in a very full lineup.
Right. And if you had Jordan Walker hitting like you thought he was going to hit, then now you've got 10, and
Right.
that's what you need. You need minimum 10 because somebody's going to be hurt, somebody's going to need a day off. Like
You got to have
here's
bats off
exact
the bench.
you got to have guys off the bench. And here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Yesterday's game was a day game after a night game. So your starting catcher needs the day off because it's a day game after a night game. All right. So Ivan Herrera needs a break from behind the plate. So Paez is going to play. And that's fine. That's what Paez is there for. Fine. And you understand that, okay, he's carrying his 080 batting average in there to play. And that's fine. You can bat him ninth. But you can't bat him ninth because you've already got a guy like Siani who's batting ninth. And then you're going to say, well, Mason Wynn needs a day off because he jammed his wrist the other day on a defensive play in the hole, and he needs a day off. So now you're going to put Brandon Crawford in there with his 150 batting average or whatever that is. Now you got a full third of your lineup. And I looked at this when the lineup came out yesterday. I was sitting in the ballpark with my dad and my son, looking at this lineup, and I looked at their batting averages on the lineup, and I said, you add all three of those guys together, add their batting averages up, you don't get to Rogers Hornsby. You don't. Like the three of them together don't add up to Rogers Hornsby. That's the whole bottom third of our lineup.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what Marmol's supposed to do with that. It's a miracle we scored 4 runs with that lineup. It just is. And I'm like, Mo, where are you? Like, get some kind of reinforcements for this.
I would agree.
Somebody,
All right.
somebody, go
So,
get Avisail Garcia off the waiver wire or something.
well, so you kind of led us into the offense specifically. So let's talk about some of these guys by name.
Okay.
Like my top two, let's say top three are going to be really fun to talk about. And then after that, it's going to be less fun. Nolan Gorman, Burley, and Mason Wynn. Like
Okay.
those 3 guys at this point are carrying our team. You've also
Heck yeah.
got behind them Ivan Herrera, who's doing pretty well.
I agree with that.
Um, Gorman and
I'm a,
Burley, they're both taken off. The past 2 or 3 weeks for both of them have been fantastic. I would
mhm.
argue that Burleson is a professional hitter who hits home runs. I would argue that Gorman is a home run hitter and you don't get a whole lot else.
That's accurate. 100% accurate.
Mason Wynn, though, I mean, his batting
Does it
average
all
today is at 309. He's
a little
he's
pop.
one of our best hitters, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the 3 of those guys have been a huge plus, at least recently. And the fact that opposing teams are always worried about Gorman and his bat, whether he gets on base or not, that fear that he puts in really
Mhm.
helps out.
Yeah. Opposing team fear is a big deal. And that's one of the
100%.
reasons I don't worry about Nato and Goldie is that they still have that fear factor on the opposing because people know the names, they know the reputation, and they know, okay, yeah, okay, he's hitting 230, but he'll still hit a bomb off you if you make a mistake. So I don't worry
You've
about
got
those
a
guys.
runner on base ahead of him, like just a runner on first and Gorman up. That's a ton of extra stress right there because they're
Yes.
not approaching him the same way they're approaching Michael Ciani or some of these other guys.
Which is the exact flip side of the same coin of having 3 guys at the bottom of your order hitting 180, 150, and 080 is
Right.
that there's no fear, no
Right.
fear whatsoever. The manager's like, I could throw anybody out there to pitch to those guys.
Right. You can
Doesn't
put your
matter.
left fielder out there and you'll be just fine.
Exactly.
So, but after
But
them, I mean, like I said, Herrera is looking good. But like the 2 in particular, we've talked about a little bit already, Goldie and Arenado, like the curious case. You got 1 or 2 days where they look like they're back, and then you got another week where they look like they're lost and they have no idea what's happening.
yeah,
And I don't know what the deal is. Both of them historically have been slow starters. First month or two is a little slow, and then they turn it on and they go. Last year, they never really went like they should have. I mean, they picked it up, but it's becoming perplexing and frustrating.
okay. I'm glad you used that word because I wanted to touch on this for sure. And this is something that I saw. I went to all 3 games in Houston the last 3 days, and you see a lot of things when you're at the game in person that the TV broadcast doesn't show you.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things I picked up on is the really frustrated body language in Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt is a proud dude. He's got a decade of high level success. He has certain expectations for himself and for the team both. And he is frustrated with both of those things right now. And it shows when you watch him a little bit outside of the normal camera view. There was one play in particular, I think it was yesterday's game, that I noticed. There was a play, it must have been the game before, whatever it was. There was a play, ball hit to right field. Burleson caught the ball, but he threw to the wrong base. I think he threw home on a sac fly when he had no prayer whatsoever of getting the guy at home. And the runner on first was bluffing to go to second. And Goldie ran to the bag at first to cover his own bag, to cover the guy coming off the base. But the throw went home, which meant Goldie should have been the cutoff man for the throw home. And he had to run out in the center of the diamond at the last second and make this kind of reaching, stabbing grab of a throw home when the throw was not supposed to go home. The throw should have gone into second base, and the infielders were lined up to cut second. Gorman and I guess it was Wynn playing shortstop were lined up to cut second, and Burley threw home for no reason. And Goldie had to run out there, snare the ball to save a ball from going, off into foul territory and giving up a base. And he grabbed it and he called time, and then he spikes the ball back toward the ball boy in just obvious frustration and disgust. And I looked at that and I was like, that is a really frustrated, proud dude. Like, he's not happy with the way things are going. And I understand Burleson's a work in progress as an outfielder, and that's fine. I love his bat. I love the dude. He's a hitter, but he's not an athlete. And this is me and Will talking yesterday. Burley is a fantastic hitter, but he is not an athlete.
Sure.
And I would love to have him as a full-time DH. But right now our roster is such that we got to play him in the outfield because we don't have any, unless you're going to run Dylan Carlson out there, which maybe is the answer. But that's for Marmol to decide. Do you want Carlson in the outfield and Burley at DH, or do you want Burley in the outfield and Matt Carpenter at DH? But my point is how frustrated Goldschmidt is.
Yeah.
And I don't think this team is really going to hit on all cylinders until you start to see that frustration change over into excitement and success and those things.
Well, okay, so that kind of leads me to another question. Did you hear what Wainwright came out with here about a week ago or so?
No, sure didn't.
So I guess he was on somebody else's podcast or show or something, and he said after the game where Ollie got ejected, he said he got a text from Goldie saying, "We're going to win the division." Now, at that point, okay. I mean, they won that game, but they were not looking good. But no,
they took off a little bit after
something happened where they all got together and they all talked and they all, maybe it was like a Chris Carpenter moment where they all decided, okay, we haven't been doing what we're supposed to. Let's get together and do something. And that's kind of when they took off and went on that really nice run. Now, that being said, both he and Arenado, they are obviously very talented. They have been for a long time, and they both put in a ton of work. These are not lazy guys. These guys work their asses off, and they're not getting the results they want or anyone else wants.
Right.
But
and they set a good example for everybody else, which I appreciate. But if other guys are not pulling their weight, not doing their job, making mistakes, whatever like that, it's going to frustrate a guy like that.
Sure.
Well, and then I know he's frustrated with his own performance too. He doesn't like hitting 225 or whatever he's hitting. He doesn't like that at all.
Oh, I know. But I guess that kind of, at first it was like I heard Wainwright talking about that, and he was like, and if it comes out of my mouth, I'm a positive guy. I say stuff like that all the time. That may not mean a whole lot, but coming out of Goldie's mouth, I put a little bit more stake into that. And these guys are confident and they're in it to win it. And then going on this run, and then you talking about the frustration that you're seeing, it kind of makes me wonder: are we regressing back again, or are we going to keep pushing, keep the intensity, and get some W's here?
I honest take. I think we were super optimistic and pushing during that, what was it, 11-3 or something streak.
Yeah.
And then I think the injury to Nootbaar is a bigger deal than most fans realize. It really impacted our depth of the roster badly. The guy I left off when we rattled down the roster, the guy I left off was Fermin. That's the other guy that's on the active roster. He came up when Nootbaar went on the IL. They brought up Fermin.
Yep.
And I would argue once again, Fermin is not a legit major league hitter. All right, he's a pretty good glove guy, but he's not. The day Fermin came up, Ollie put him in as designated hitter. The guys we have as designated hitters are not designated hitter level players.
Well,
Matt Carpenter.
I would argue with you slightly on Fermin, only because he's gotten very little playing time, and because in the minors he's actually hit quite well. I got to see him a lot in spring training, and I really liked what he had to do. Granted, it was spring training, and it doesn't really count.
Okay.
Even in AAA this year, he's looked really good offensively.
I'm happy to give Fermin a shot. The problem is that if you're rolling out a lineup full of Matt Carpenter, Michael Ciani, Jose Fermin, and Pedro Paez or Brandon Crawford,
yeah,
you've got to play two of those guys every night. You have to play two of those guys, and Dylan Carlson. You have to play two of those guys every night. And last night we played three of them because Mason Wynn sat. And Ivan Herrera, who needed a day off, only got a half day off because he had to DH because we don't have enough major league hitters. Herrera
right.
should have gotten a full day off. He should have.
You're absolutely right. And
we couldn't.
When we're putting two or three of those guys in the lineup every day, to this point, we can only count on a 200 batting average or below out of all of them.
Right. And I don't like Marmol has no better options. Like I criticize Marmol heavily, but I feel bad for him that he like, what choice does he have but to roll out a bunch of 180 hitting guys because he didn't have anybody else.
Yeah.
And the loss of Nootbaar, I think, was big because you were already down Victor Scott, already down Jordan Walker, already down Tommy Edman, and then you lose Nootbaar. And not only do you lose Nootbaar's bat and glove, but you lose his energy and his enthusiasm. Nootbaar is a heart guy. He is a pulse of the team guy. He's one of those guys that gets the team riled up and rolling. He's doing hand gestures and handshakes with guys, and he's on the rail of the dugout cheering and yelling.
Nootbaar's in the dugout throwing gang signs.
Yeah, right. And he's getting guys fired up. And so I think that the frustration that I see from, like, Arenado spikes his helmet after a strikeout and Goldschmidt spikes a ball after a bad play. And that frustration that I see I've started to see it right after the Nootbaar injury. And I think that there's some cause and effect there. And
well, kind of like you're talking about, he was a bit of a pressure relief, I assume.
Yeah. And yeah, you could withstand a Nootbaar injury a lot better if you weren't already down Walker, Scott, Edman. I'm forgetting somebody. Oh, Contreras. Oh my goodness, Contreras. Okay. I mean, that's a huge loss too, obviously. Contreras is one of your core offensive guys, like right behind Arenado and Goldschmidt.
Well, when he went down, he was the only person performing offensively.
Correct. But he's also a guy a lot like Nootbaar, that he's the the straw that stirs the drink. He's a high energy guy. He's a high passion
Yeah.
guy. He plays the game with a lot of energy and a lot of emotion, and that emotion is contagious. And I mean, I understand now why Cubs fans love that guy. Like, I always hated him when he was a Cub. Now
That's
he's with
fair.
us. Like, man, I love that guy. The passion he plays with is fun to watch.
Yeah.
And so I I'm always the critical guy, and I want, like, I'm not going to criticize Marmol for the offensive woes when this is the lineup we're turning out. I'm going to look at Mo Gersh and be like, look, you see these things piling up. You haven't done anything but call up guys from the minors who are not big league hitters.
Yeah.
You know, where was the contingency plan for if Jordan Walker struggled? Where was the contingency plan if Tommy Edmonds' wrist didn't heal? Where was the contingency plan for the next time Newt Barr gets injured? Because we know that he plays hard and he gets injured.
Well,
He's
to
been
your
injured
point,
twice already this year.
yeah. Well, to your point, our contingency plan was Brandon Crawford, which I like the guy, but I was not a fan of that signing. And
Okay.
Matt Carpenter loved the dude, and there's really not a lot of defensive prowess, and the offense isn't quite where we need it to be to, I guess, fully justify a roster spot for him either.
No,
And then
those
I
guys.
guess you've also got Dylan Carlson as a backup plan and potential, but he hasn't really come through. I mean, it looked like he might have a really good year coming out of spring, but then he got hurt and it hadn't, it just looks like the same as it has the past 2 years.
My only criticism, I guess, if I was Marmol, I would roll with Dylan Carlson more and give him the chance. Like, give
Yeah.
him one last chance. We gave Paul DeYoung way more chances than we've given Dylan Carlson, but I would roll Dylan Carlson in right field and Burleson at DH a little bit more, or
That would give you a very strong defensive outfield.
it would improve your defense at least. Okay. So you got, Donnie in left, Siani in center. Siani's a fantastic defensive player. God, I love him defensively.
Oh, he's very, very strong.
He's awesome. All right. Like, if he could hit enough to stay in the lineup, he'd be a contender for a Gold Glove someday. He's that good.
Oh, yes.
But and then if you had DC in right, you'd have a really nice defensive outfield. Burleson has been a little bit of a liability in right field. I saw some of that in the Houston series. There was a double by some player that he got a really bad jump on, and the ball was maybe 4 feet past his glove and then bounced over the track for an automatic double. And I think that Dylan Carlson would have caught that ball and saved us 2 runs on, I think it was Monday. That said, I want Burley's bat in the lineup every day. I want his bat in the lineup every day. The dude rakes, he hits. He didn't get enough at bats last year when the team sucked. Give the man at bats.
Yeah.
They didn't give him enough at bats. I'd like to see Burley get 500-600 at bats this year. I'd like to see that. And Gorman too. He needs 500-600 at bats to see what he can do. He might hit 40 home runs. He might strike out 200 times, but he'll hit 40 home runs. And I'll take that.
Yeah, if you're getting 40 home runs and 90 plus RBIs, there's a trade-off. I think I can be all right with that.
Yeah, I can live with that. He doesn't have to be Albert Pujols to be a successful ball player.
Yeah. All right. So what about our pitching? We can do bullpen, we can do starting pitching.
Ooh, pick one.
All right, let's do bullpen first.
Bullpen first. Okay.
Keenan Middleton. He made 2 appearances in spring training and he looked awesome. And then he made a few appearances in a rehab assignment and he's out for the year and
he's out for the year.
Probably miss part of next year too.
Okay. Once again, we got to, here's my hot take on all of this. And it's bigger than bullpen. It's bigger than starting pitching. It's bigger than offense. I think the organization has a systemic problem with not having a backup plan or not having a good enough backup plan.
Mm.
They expect that, hey, we signed Middleton and we added Kittredge, and so we fixed it. Okay, well, now one of them went down and never threw a pitch. What was your backup plan? Who else did you have?
They've
And,
done
and the answer is
similar things in
Lutos.
recent years. That we've had very similar situations in recent years. Brett
Right.
Cecil.
Yeah.
Um, what was the lefty that came from Cleveland that was a shutdown guy for a
Andrew
few
Miller.
years? Yep,
Andrew Miller.
Andrew Miller.
Andrew Miller should have been a fantastic signing. I was excited about him, and he didn't live up to it. He
Yeah.
had like 1 out of 3 years where he was good but not great, and the other two he was just a liability.
I will say there's been some like both of those guys could have and should have been better signings than they were. So,
Right.
when they were signed, I was relatively pleased. Brett Cecil got too much money, different conversation. Um, I would say that as part of that systemic problem you're talking about, you're also looking at some guys that have come up through the minors that really have not done what we wanted them to do or needed them to do as well. We've had a lot of those
100%.
that have really struggled quite a bit. I mean, we could sit
100%.
here for a while talking about some of those guys.
Starting with Dylan Carlson and rolling right up to Walker and Scott.
Well, let's give Walker a little grace. Let's see what happens. He had a really good second half last year. Let's see what he does going forward.
Sure.
Victor Scott,
There's no
I
reason he should have
mean,
gone
he
into
was in
back.
the majors before he played a AAA game. I don't think he's ever going to be a silver slugger. I don't think he's ever going to hit 20 home runs, but he might be a very good player. We'll see. But I mean, pitching specifically, we've got so many guys, starters, relievers, and just keep going down the line that have the talent and just really haven't been able to put it together. I mean, you've got Libertor right now, who
Yep.
sometimes he looks really good, sometimes he looks really bad.
And
And
Thompson,
you've got
same
a
thing.
bunch of those guys that have come through. Some are still with us and some are not. Giovanni Gallegos, 3 years ago, he looked really good. Last year, he was not great. And this year, he looks really bad.
Yeah. Despite some talk in spring training about how he had figured out what was wrong and poised for a bounce back, that talking point, oh, so and so is poised for a bounce back, and all these things, and those talking points get said so many times that organizationally everybody starts to believe it, but the reality doesn't match that talking point.
Yeah.
And then there's not a backup plan for when a Gallegos should be a key guy. He should be one of your like top four leverage relievers, along with JoJo and Kit, and obviously Hells.
Yeah.
Those should be your four high leverage dudes. And when one of them goes to, and Middleton was supposed to be the fifth, and then you'd had this
That would have been an
talented.
amazing bullpen, like historically good.
Exactly, and that's what you thought you had. But then when one of them goes down with injury and the other goes down with a bloated ERA.
I can't pitch
Uh,
itis.
right, hanging curveball itis.
Yeah.
I guess it's a slider with Geo. It's a hanging slider that keeps getting mashed. Um, but when those guys go down, there wasn't much of a backup plan.
Yeah.
So and I think that this lack of a backup plan thing is systemic throughout the organization's leadership, in that I see it in roster construction, but I also see it in game day managing. This is my biggest complaint with Marmol, is that he seems to have a plan A, and he doesn't know how to adjust to plan B. He lays out what he wants to do in a game, and he wants to stick with it. And yesterday's game was a really good example of this, because that can go both directions. That can go like, he doesn't adjust from plan A when things don't go well, but he also doesn't adjust from plan A when things go better than expectations. Yesterday, Miles Michaelis was better than expectations. He threw 6 excellent innings, was at like 62, 65 pitches through 6 innings. Okay. And he didn't run him out there for a 7th. Why did Michaelis not get the 7th inning when he was pitching so well? And he
Because
brought
what he's done this year. this year, the third, the fourth, the fifth inning, one of those innings, he has a blow up inning. Like you've seen it all year long. It just comes out of nowhere. He's doing great. He's cruising, and then he gives up 4 runs in the fourth inning or whatever it is. It has happened time and time again. I
He had that.
actually think that was one of his better moves that he's made this year by getting him out when it's still good.
He was cruising. He threw the sixth inning on less than 10 pitches. The Astros weren't throwing out a very competitive roster with the exception of Yordan Alvarez.
And usually I would agree
and
with you,
Diaz.
but he just that's what he's done all year. He's looked really good, like a ace pitcher, and then it's all blown up in his face. So for me, take this inning, take this outing with 6 innings pitched and 62 pitches, 2 runs. He had 2 bad pitches, 2 solo home runs,
2 solo bombs, yeah,
and get him out of there while he's feeling good. Let's build the confidence and make it be better in the future. I will take that.
Counterpoint. Our bullpen was already heavily stressed.
That's true.
The Philly series and the first 2 games in Houston, the bullpen was stressed. They showed graphics up there during the game about all of the pitches thrown by all the different relievers. And the Tuesday game, we were down to Lutos and Leahy having to pitch because we didn't have anybody else who could go. And so now your starter goes 6 on 62 pitches and you can't get a 7th out of him. I don't save your bullpen. And you have no days off. You got to play again tonight.
That's true.
No days off.
That's all true. However, we're going up against the Rockies at home and the Pirates at home, teams that we should be able to smash. We need to get that win. And let's build the confidence. Let's sacrifice this one game. Let's use our horses, who had a great game, by the way, after all 3 of them looking a little questionable recently. They locked it down in those 3 innings.
The JoJo Kit Helsley thing at the end was just as good as Michaelis the first 6. Like
it was magical.
Yeah,
they gave awesome. Up, I think, 1 hit. So I think I applaud him for that. I think we take those 6, we give Michaelis a little bit of a break, rest his arm. He's feeling good. Get him out of there. Hopefully, the next couple times through, he looks better. And let's get that win, and let's go home, and let's beat the hell out of the Rockies and the Pirates.
That's interesting. I saw that completely different. I saw a burned out bullpen that needed a rest. And the only guy rested in that pen was Helsley. Everybody else had been used and used and used and used. I would have liked to have seen Kittredge get the whole day off.
Sure.
And he was coming up with like 8-9-1 in their batting order coming around. Let Michaelis at least get 8 and 9. Save JoJo for the 8th when you were probably going to face Alvarez, Yordan Alvarez, the left-handed hitter who JoJo matches up real well with. Instead, Kittredge ended up facing him. I didn't see it. I thought one more inning out of Michaelis would have made a lot of sense to save our bullpen and set us up for.
I know what you're saying, and I usually would agree 100%. I do think, okay, in that case, just flip Kittredge and Romero, no big deal. But the fact that Michaelis has been so good for 70% of his innings and so bad for 30% of them, I think he needs that boost. We obviously needed that game. And, it's just, I don't think that was the wrong play. I know what you're saying. Also, the bottom of the order is what got to Michaelis during that game.
Diaz hit a home run. He wasn't due up. Who was the other one? Oh, I think it
was your 7, 8, 9 hitters that got to him.
I'm looking at it. It was the 6 and 7 hitters who got to him. Diaz and Cabbage, who hit the solo home runs.
Right.
And you're not afraid of Cabbage. That guy's their version of Dylan Carlson. He's hitting. He just ran into a home run. He's hitting 235 with.
Wow.
That was his first home run of the season.
Way to go!
Yay! Okay, so you made a mistake to a big league hitter and he hit it. That okay. Don't make mistakes like that. But
yeah.
Diaz on the other. Diaz is a legit hitter. He'll hit you.
He had 3 homers on the season. He hit 3 home runs in 3 games against us.
I know, but he also had a really good year last year, and he's a highly touted prospect. He's a hitter that I worry about in their lineup.
Yeah.
Not like Jordan or anything, but
Yeah.
uh, I mean, obviously Jordan is their stud. Um, side note, we got a break when Tucker went down with an injury in the first game because he's their other stud.
Yes.
That dude's a hitter.
Yes, I agree. Um, all right. So how about our starting pitching?
Starting pitching. Ooh.
So Sonny looked amazing, like a world beater. And the past 3 outings, I'm honestly a little bit concerned. He's asked to be pulled out 2 different times early because I guess he was tired or whatnot. And then one of those 3, he got shelled. So
Yeah,
a little concerned
he's
about Sonny.
I put him in the same category with Arenado and Goldschmidt, though, in that I have some trust in him. He's got a track record of success. I think that he's going to have his, slumps and his bad spots and whatever, and he'll
Yeah.
he'll bounce back. He'll figure it out. I know he's a competitor. I know he's a hard worker. Um, I think he might. Let's see. He's got to be due to pitch in the Colorado series
Yep.
because he did not pitch in Houston, so he's got to pitch here pretty soon, either today or tomorrow against Colorado. He may go out there and throw 7 shutout against the Rockies
That would be
here.
nice.
He might. I think he's as capable of that as he is of having another bad outing. So I'm not
Yeah.
super worried about Sonny Gray yet. Yeah, sure. It's a little stretch of not his best, and it's mildly concerning, but I don't think it's anything to
Yeah.
spend a lot of time talking about.
I kind of feel the same. I just hope it doesn't continue.
Yeah, if it continues, then
Um,
obviously you got to
yeah.
talk about it. But
So Miles, we talked about, had a really strong 6 innings. I mean, we've talked about him quite a bit. I think we're pretty solid there. I would really rather see, the really good Miles and a lot less of the really bad Miles because he's got the
Miles,
ability. Just sometimes it's odd. It's like the switch gets flipped sometimes.
Miles is an enigma to me. I don't understand why he isn't consistently better. He's
Yeah.
very inconsistent. He'll throw a great game and then he'll get lit up like a batting practice pitcher.
By the
Uh,
way, have you noticed how much he looks like my father?
yes, absolutely, absolutely does. Yes, particularly when he sports the mustache
Oh yes.
in particular. Yeah, his throwing motion looks nothing like your dad, but just facial, yes, 100%.
All right. What are your thoughts on Lance Lynn? I got a few things there.
Actually, I like Lance Lynn. I do. I'm higher on him now than I was, you know, 5, 6 months ago when we first signed him. When we first signed him, I thought, what a stupid signing. This guy is, past his prime. I felt the same way about Crawford and Carpenter and Lynn. They're all three of great. We signed all stars from 2017.
Yeah.
Awesome. But this
Yeah.
is 7 years later. These guys are over the hill. They're not any good anymore. They're all going to get completely overmatched. Lynn
Right.
has not been overmatched. He still makes mistakes in the middle of the zone and gives up bombs. Um, he's not a svelte athlete who's going to field his position that well, and that beats him up sometimes.
Just
Particularly that
put down
last
a little
start.
bunt, you'll get on first.
And that's the problem is he's got to roll off the mound to go field that bunt and then trip over himself while trying to throw the ball over to first, and that's kind of ugly. But you didn't pay him all that money to be a fielder. You paid him to throw 2-seam fastballs, moving in, moving out. That's what you paid him to do. He still does that, and he's a bulldog. He competes. I love his competitive attitude. I love his fiery nature. I like that. The team needs that, particularly with Wilson and Newt down. You need that fiery attitude. So I like that. He's been a victim of some bad luck, but he's also been a victim of some misdirected fastballs that get left in the middle of the zone and get smoked.
Yeah.
But you're going to get that with Lance Lynn. And I'm okay with all of that if he's your number 4 or 5 starter. That's just not so great if he's your number 2 guy.
Right.
If Miles is great and is your number 2.
Yeah. I've enjoyed watching Lance. I expected more of him than most people did. I do tend to be, I guess, looking on the brighter side when it comes to the Cardinals. Maybe I'm more hopeful and less realistic sometimes.
I know I'm more negative than you. You're more optimistic than me. That's the way we are.
Yeah, it works out.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lance has been good. I think he's been exactly what we needed him to be. Yeah, if he could be a little bit better, that'd be great. But
you couldn't
he's
expect
been a
that.
lot better than what most people thought. And
Yes.
exactly right with all the fire and the energy and all that stuff. I think this team needs more of that. We've got some of the very even keeled guys who are, supposedly leaders in this clubhouse and whatnot. But if everyone's like that, there's no real energy. And
Yeah.
I think you need both.
Yep.
So after Lance, we've got, another good news story being Kyle Gibson.
Gibson has been, again, better than my expectation. Once again, I was a little bit of a pessimist, and I expected, Lynn and Gibson to roll out there with ERAs close to 5, and they've both been better than that.
Yeah.
Gibson gives you a good competitive outing every time. Sometimes he gets beat up a little bit, but he's competitive.
I think he's had 2 blips, and every other start has been a good start.
Okay, so he pitched Monday here in Houston, and he had 1 real bad inning, but his other innings he looked really good. Like he looked untouchable for a couple of those innings, and then had a real bad one where he made some mistakes in the zone and got pounded. But he gave the team a real good chance to win with his overall outing, and then the bullpen imploded. But
yeah,
that's not his fault. He's been better than I expected. He's not a world beater by any means. I think this team needed 3 world-beating starting pitchers, and instead we got 1 world-beating starting pitcher and 2 journeyman adequate starting pitchers. But they've been better than expectation, I think.
They have. Gibson has been a nice surprise. So I'm in Palm Beach, and I'm in Jupiter. I got to see a lot of spring training up close and personal. And I was relatively high on Gibson. I was, okay, well, it's spring training, it doesn't matter. Oh, well, it's spring training, it doesn't matter. Oh, well, it's spring training, it doesn't matter. And then I was, oh my God, we're starting the season in like 10 days, and he's still terrible. Now I'm panicking. And then all of a sudden, his first game out, and the whole rest of the way almost, he's looked really good. So I've been very pleased with him. That has been fun to watch. And then, you've got the curious case of Steven Matz as a continuation from last year, where he at times looks really good, and then at times looks like a 12-year-old girl on the mound and has no clue what he's doing. And obviously he's hurt right now.
Again,
hopefully he's going to come back in a couple weeks. But yeah, I mean, last year, the second half of the season, he was our best pitcher. No questions asked.
For about a month and a half.
The whole second half. I think the entire season last year, his ERA was a 3.86, believe it or not.
Okay. Some of that was in the bullpen.
Right?
It is a little shocking. Some of that was in the bullpen. Some of it was as a starter. Once again, like a big chunk of the season was on the injured list.
Yeah.
And I know that my concern is that the entire, organization's leadership from Mo to Gersh to Marmol to Dusty Blake, they all want to grab and latch on to, wow, there was 2 months of excellent pitching there. Maybe what if we get that? Mm-hmm. What if that's the real guy? Oh, that's he finally showed who he really is. Well, maybe you're not going to get 6 months of that. Maybe you're not going to get 35 starts of that.
And now you're back to the lack of a backup plan.
And now you have no backup plan. Your backup plan was Liberatore and Thompson, who have not shown the ability to fill that role.
Yeah.
And your backup plan to that was Palante, which is basically a bullpen start.
Which his first start he looked amazing, and in his second start he looked like trash.
Okay, once again, Steven Matz has had one start where he looked amazing too. And just because you get one amazing start doesn't mean that that's the guy you're going to get every time.
I know. It's frustrating as a fan. I'm not a professional baseball player. I pay attention and I know stuff, but it's frustrating to see the huge differences between, look, I'm really good, and then I show up the next week and I'm really bad. I just wish we could close the gap a little bit.
Here's the uncomfortable fact. When you get to the highest level of the sport, whether it's Major League Baseball or the NBA or the NFL or the NHL, whatever it is, the difference between awesome and terrible on the results are hugely, they're wide. The difference in your performance is very narrow.
Yes.
Very narrow. The difference between a soft ground ball and a 400-foot home run is a pitch location of about this, because your bat is only this big. And so the difference between throwing a slider with 18 inches of bite versus one with only 9 inches of bite, and the 9-inch, the pitch with 9 inches of break gets smoked by major league hitters. And a pitch with 18 inches of break, I'm making these numbers up, but the pitch with 18 inches of break makes the guy look foolish. And the difference between the two is a finger here or a finger there. And asking, a professional athlete to repeat that and hit that every single time, no human's going to do that every time. Bob Gibson and Sandy Koufax didn't do it every time. They gave up a home run or two in their careers.
Yep.
And those differences are so much more narrow, so much smaller than the casual fan sees and recognizes. We see, oh my God, what a terrible hanging curveball. What kind of cut him. He's not worth $20 million a year. Send him to the retirement. Send him off with Angel Hernandez. He's terrible. And then he'll throw the next one, and JoJo is a perfect example of this. He threw a couple of terrible pitches and got crushed on Monday. And then he came back Wednesday, dialed in and threw, some great pitches and mowed through a lineup and looked like the second coming of Sandy Koufax out there,
Yeah.
For 10 pitches or something.
Yeah.
The difference is very narrow. That's my point.
That is a fair point. We are critiquing grown men who've been doing this for usually at least a decade or two. And like you're saying, the difference is in some cases millimeters between someone who looks like they should be making 20 or 30 million a year and someone who should be, mopping the floors.
Correct. And, while I'm usually pretty pessimistic, I want to recognize that those differences are actually quite small.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I appreciate you putting that out there. All right. Well, let's get you signed up and do this again, shall we?
You bet.
All right. Maybe you can bring your boy.
Bring the teenager in too. That'd be kind of fun.
There we go. All right. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it.
Always. We had fun at the games this week.
Huh?
We had fun at the games in Houston, even though we blew 2 of them away. We could have gotten all 3 of those, I should say. We could have. There it is.
See what happens. We got 2 weak teams coming to St. Louis. We'll see what we do.
Yeah. Sonny Gray versus the Rockies tonight. Hopefully we can chalk that one up.
Oh, yeah.
All righty.
Awesome. Thank you. Everybody, like, subscribe, notifications, click the things, all that crap. Thank you for joining. Yeah, pointing, whatever. Redbeard Talks Redbirds. We'll talk to you soon. Let's go Cardinals.
All right, go Cardinals.
Hey, y'all. Thank you so much once again for joining us for this episode of Redbeard Talks Redbirds podcast. Make sure you go over there, hit like and subscribe for this channel. And don't forget to hit that notification button. Make sure you don't miss the next episode. Let's go Cardinals.